If you watched our video on aperture, then you learned about what we call the exposure triangle. To recap, the exposure triangle is made up of aperture, shutter speed, and ISO, each of which affects the exposure or brightness of your photo. Today, we are going to talk about shutter speed. You'll remember that we talked about the eye analogy. Aperture is how wide the pupil opens to let in light, and shutter speed is how long your eyelid stays open. Back before digital photography took over and film photography was all we had, shutter speed referred to how long the film was exposed to the scene being photographed. Digital photography follows the same rules, only there is a sensor instead of a film strip. The shutter is a mechanism inside the camera that opens and closes to let light reach the sensor. Basically, the shutter speed, or exposure time, is the amount of time that the shutter is open. Shutter speed is measured in seconds, or usually fractions of seconds. For example, 1/8, 1/15, 1/60th, 1/125th, and so on. The measurements refer to how long the shutter is open. A shutter speed of 1/500th is open for 1/500th of a second. A fast shutter speed is when the shutter opens and closes quickly, such as 1/1000th, while a slow shutter speed is when the shutter speed stays open for a longer period of time, like 1/15th of a second. Like aperture, shutter speed doesn't only affect the exposure of your photo. It has a second function as well. The two aspects of your photo that shutter speed affects are exposure and motion. First, we'll look at how shutter speed affects exposure. A slow shutter speed lets more light in, while a fast shutter speed lets less light in. If you are in a bright, sunny area, a slow shutter speed will allow too much light in and your photo will be overexposed or too bright. If you are in a dimly lit area and you use a fast shutter speed, your photo will be underexposed or too dark because you did not allow the sensor enough time to soak up light. Now, we will look at how shutter speed affects motion. Most of the objects you will take photos of will be in motion. You might be photographing a race car speeding by or a dog running through a field, but even a person sitting in a chair will naturally be moving a little. Using shutter speed, you can either freeze the motion, so the object looks perfectly still, or let the motion blur. A fast shutter speed will freeze the motion completely. A slow shutter speed will allow the moving object to blur. Slow shutter speeds can also cause blur from camera shake if the camera moves while taking the photo. This is why photographers often use tripods for long exposures. You might be asking, why would you intentionally want motion blur in a photo? Blur can illustrate movement or bring focus to the subject while cutting out distracting elements. You, as the photographer, have artistic license to choose when you want your photo to be blurred or not. For example, take a look at these photos of water. All of the pictures are good. It is simply a matter of personal preference for the style you are going for. Now, let's go over some cool shutter speed techniques that you can use. Panning is when the camera follows the moving subject while on a slow shutter speed, which keeps the subject relatively sharp and blurs everything around it. On the other hand, if you left your camera stationary on a slow shutter speed, the moving object would be blurry while the background is in focus. When taking photos of stars, you have to use a very long exposure. Stars are very faint, so the shutter has to stay open for a long time so the sensor can collect enough light. In the following photo, the stars look like streaks. Because the Earth rotates, stars appear to move across the sky during very long exposures, creating streaks called star trails. Now let's review the different types of motion. Freeze motion is when everything in the photo is frozen, looking perfectly still. Blur motion is when the object in motion is blurred. And panning is when the background is blurred but the object in motion is frozen. Here is an exercise you can do to become more familiar with shutter speed. Pick an object that is constantly moving, for example, a ceiling fan, a kid on a swing, etc., and take the first photo of it on the slowest shutter speed that your camera allows. Then take a photo of that object on every shutter speed setting possible, from the slowest option to the fastest. Compare how each shutter speed affects the motion of your subject. Let us know in the comments if you have any questions about shutter speed, and thanks for watching.